Well, man, it's great to meet you. Before we get into live in Mississippi, I want to know 5 years ago, this pandemic really ravaged the music community, everybody. How did you make it through that pandemic and how has it affected the way that you approach things now?
Well, I kind of had to figure out how to stay out there. I had just come off of touring for a couple of years, opening up Tab Benoit's shows out there. He had produced a record for me, my first record under my own name. And went out there and was opening shows with him, touring, on the bus and everything. And it was already my plan to kind of shift off into doing some of my own tours and headline runs and stuff and to go in the studio right at the beginning. We went in the studio in late February of 2020. So literally was doing a record and then planning a year around that. So when everything shut down, I kind of had to figure out, well, how do I still keep moving forward, putting out, keep a record coming out. And I ended up, switching to doing live streams, which is something that I never thought I would get into at first, just because, I kind of really like doing the power trio thing. And I'm just like, what is me with an acoustic guitar in my living room? How does that connect,
Yeah.
But but in the end, it was a great way to stay connected with people. And so I started doing that like weekly. And so it really kind of created a little bit of a community and I still have people around the world, honestly, that have come up and said, "Man, I was watching you every Thursday." So that's kind of a wild thing. I would never have thought somebody would discover what I was doing through an acoustic living room live stream. But yeah, so kind of got into that, and then also it sort of made me think more about, how to have a store and, more merch on offer and just different things like that, and how to get more into music videos and stuff. So ultimately, I mean, I did grow my audience during that time, when we weren't playing live. My audience actually got bigger. And uh and yeah, I got to work on some things that you just never really get around to when you're touring, just on the technical end, really, or just on the having a better infrastructure set up for people to come into, and videos and merch and mailing lists and like all that kind of stuff. I really got it kind of more solidified during that time. So ultimately, um, I'm thankful for the way that it went. Obviously, nobody plans for that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
So where are you located on the planet?
New Orleans.
Oh, you're in New Orleans, right on. Okay. Are you
Yeah.
from there originally?
Well, I was born in Alexandria, Louisiana,
Okay.
which is in the middle of the state, but New Orleans, I've been in New Orleans most of my life, and my whole musical life has been New Orleans. So, this has always been home for
That has
me.
to be an amazing backbone to have such I mean, I've never been in New Orleans. I got married in 2019 and we were going to honeymoon there, and there was a
Yeah.
hurricane brewing. So we had to repivot to Colorado. It was our Bob Ross happy accident honeymoon. But I really
Right.
wanted to get down there. And all I ever hear from people, whether they've lived there or live there or have been there, is that it's just this magically wonderful music cauldron that just brings thousands of dreams into your mind.
Yeah, I have to say that that's true for me. There's just so much, like, between just seeing, like, funk bands and jazzy funk stuff, and there's so many, like, individual musicians, bass players, drummers, keyboard players, horn players, that play in all these different groups, and you end up jamming with people just off the cuff in different circumstances. I don't, really play sideman for anybody anymore, but I spent a while taking those gigs just because I was soaking up so much, from playing with, Corey Henry, who not Snarky Puppy Corey Henry, but Corey Henry from Rebirth, who has now his Corey Henry, Treme Funktet, and then Cyril Neville, or actually before that, just people that were really kind of coming from a different background of New Orleans music, um, the Neville family and the brass bands and stuff like that. And so playing that stuff, it really worked its way into what I do as well. There's a lot of funk in what I do, whether or not it's immediately apparent to people. Um, and yeah, it's something where there's some sort of real bedrock of creativity here that is not about hit songs or image at all. It's really um, you know, people are really digging into the music, and that's something that, we're not really a music industry city, I don't think, in the regular sense, you know what I mean? Like Nashville or Los Angeles or whatever, but we're a musicians town,
Yeah.
There's a lot of bands here that tour and then come home and play, like the Maple Leaf, for instance. You could see George Porter Jr. from the Meters, and like pretty much every Monday that he's not on the road, he's playing there. And other, cats, John Cleary, and there's just all these great international touring artists that are based out of here. And yeah, it's just, it's definitely a melting pot of styles. There's not a lot of guitar heavy stuff from here, but obviously Anders Osborne, but they're in Tab, Benoit, but he's from Homa, but that's just an hour away. But it's a heavy funk and brass culture, but it all kind of, it all works its way in there. And there's just a to me, there's just a rhythm to the city all the time
So
that's in there.
yeah, no, and I always hear about that. That's I can't wait to get down there to feel that because that's what it is. It's there's a rhythm, there's a hum.
Yeah.
So was it always going to be the blues and the guitar? Was that going to be your destiny, or did anything else ever come into your um into your view that you wanted to go after?
Well, I think when I first started playing, it was like arena rock bands were the thing that made me go, "Oh, I got to do that,"
Yeah.
And and I definitely still have influence from that. But then I kind of got more interested in guitar, and then, and I always kind of had like thought Hendrix was cool, and like certain things had broken through my, hard rock awareness, But then I got more into guitar and got into like Joe Satriani and Steve Vai and stuff like that, even though I can't, I never became one of those type of players, but I got just more interested in guitar stuff. And then that kind of, I started to pick out how much of that was blues. You hear people describing where they got their influences, and it keeps coming back to like Albert King and, you know, um, different, Freddie King, different blues players and stuff. So I started digging into that. Stevie Ray Vaughan for me, admittedly, like for a lot of guitar players, that was a big, like just lightning rod moment where, there was something about the way that he attacked the guitar that just stopped me in my tracks. And, but like I said, I dug into Freddie a lot is another one that I really like. And then that combined with sort of, the opportunity to play live. I never really clicked with like other teenage musicians because I just never could find something that felt, like inspiring. And I was around, family that played that were like gigging, and then through them, their friends and stuff. So older musicians that were gigging. And so I just was trying to be able to catch up to working musicians, you know? So there was immediately like a disconnect from like the other, 13, 14-year-olds or whatever that were playing stuff because I just wasn't into just banging out noise in a garage or whatever. I wanted to figure out how to get in the groove with these older cats. And so the blues was a way of playing with these guys too. So it was all, I think it was, I was inspired by it. And then the moment that I was able to understand what a slow blues in C meant, or, what a shuffle in E was, and kind of get the idea of how to improvise. And then you get that rush of playing with people on stage and you're coming up with stuff on the spot. And then from that point, it just was like, it just completely opened a new window for me versus, learning the Metallica riffs to a Metallica song or something like that. Even though, I still have a great respect for all that stuff, but it's just that improvisational thing, being able to play with people uh, without rehearsal for the first time and just have these exciting in the moment experiences that really lit the fire for blues for me. Um, but when I did that for a while and I was gigging, as a teenager and stuff, when it was time to kind of find my own voice in it, I got back into going through different styles because I just couldn't immediately. I was like, I'm not going to sound like Freddie King, like it's something about my experience. I was looking for a way to express things that I wasn't feeling necessarily as blues.
Yeah.
And and so, I kind of forayed back into hard rock and stuff. But I found my way back to it really just because it was always at the root of everything. If I just pick up a guitar and I don't think about what I'm gonna do, then it's usually bluesy, you
Yeah.
know. So, and again, that improvisational thing, the more that I experimented with writing and recording, the more I got into a position where, I was messing with electronics and all this different stuff. And then it's like, you get to a point where it's like, man, I don't want to get up on stage with a computer and a click track. And like, that's not like, I never wanted to do that. And once it occurred to me that that was sort of what the direction I was going, and I was setting myself up for something that was not going to give me the experience I wanted on stage. It just occurred to me that I was just like, man, strip all that away and just, guitar bass drums and just do, the stuff that got you inspired in the first place.
So I'm curious, we kind of talked a little bit about the pandemic and live music went away. This latest album, Live in Mississippi, is there anything extra special about this being a live album in light of what we've lived through?
Well, yeah, I think yeah, live music is so special, um, in a way that I hope is still appreciated, as the generations go on, because I think what live music means to some people is a bit, I mean, there's different styles and there's different things and different art forms, and somebody getting up there with a microphone to a backing track and choreographed dancers, that's a different art form. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with liking that, but you start to realize like, this thing of like musicians actually like locking in together in the moment. And it's, you're tapping into something that's bigger than yourself. You don't really know how you're able to do this or what's going on. You're creating this moment, and the crowd there is also part of it. That is just this integral part of the equation. And so I think, especially, yeah, having to step away from that for, a couple of years, um, I really feel like it's important to capture that because that really is at the core of what makes me want to do this.
Yeah.
It's that in the moment experience with the crowd, with the other musicians. And yeah, it's, we pretty much I try to record albums much in the same way. Maybe we add a shaker or a tambourine on, or like a thing here or there to kind of make it the record version. But we pretty much, I mean, I don't like overdubbing guitar solos because I need to like play the solo with the drummer in the room, in order for it to be what it is. Um, but yeah, I just, recording live stuff, really is an important part of just capturing what it is at the moment, capturing where I'm at this particular moment. And some of my favorite records of artists, are the live things, especially blues artists, um, whether or not I'm considered a blues artist or rock artist is irrelevant to me, but just some of my favorite bluesy artists, it's the live stuff where you go, damn, um, and so yeah, man, I just always thought that was a part of the uh the full picture. You got the live, the recorded version, the studio version, and then you hear the live version, you see how things evolve.
Yeah, I think it's totally essential that, especially being separated during COVID and having everything virtual, it's very essential. I think it reignited our passion to be in a room and exchange those vibrations of music together. It's huge. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, as somebody that has a live album out that thrives on the live environment, what was the live show for you growing up that blew you away, that made you think, that's what I want to do with my life?
Oh man. It's hard to say. I mean, I think it was probably like, um, you know, Guns N' Roses or something like that.
Yeah.
I went to see a lot of, those like, um, yeah, just like hard rock bands, um, but yeah, I mean, I went to see Metallica like several times. Um, and Yeah, I mean, it was kind of all of it. I mean, I just remember like going to arena shows and just being, before I had any concept of really, you know, anything else, that I think I always wanted to be a musician. I don't remember ever wanting to be anything else, but something about that whole experience of just people, you know, um singing along with songs, and just the excitement of the whole thing, um and then combined with that, um I would go see bands at the local bar and grill or something, that was you could get in, because it served food and stuff like that. So like, when I was first starting to play, I was able to see, um local musicians that were really good. Like, up in Alexandria at first, and yeah, so, you know, it's kind of, I feel like it all gets in there. It's always so hard for me to isolate, like, well, who are your main people, There's certainly some that I feel like I probably dove in deeper with than others, but I feel like it all works in there and influences you in some way or another.
So if anybody wants to pick up a copy of this album, catch you live, any of the good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
Well, I mean, I have a store, and I have my records on the store, as well as t-shirts and stuff that are only available on my website. So you can go to ericjohanson.com or shop.ericjohanson.com, and I could sign the records, and I'll send stuff with it and all that kind of stuff. But as far as shows, same thing, ericjohanson.com. You can get the tour schedule. We're about to head out again, kind of toward the Midwest. Won't be hitting Kansas City this time, though, hopefully next time. But but yeah, I mean, and then, you know, online, social media, Eric Johanson 504 on Instagram and Facebook. And I'm on the other ones too. I you know, got different handles on a couple of them. Eric Johanson, I think. Yeah, just Eric Johanson on YouTube and TikTok. Not that I use it that much, but
I dig
try.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll put links in the show notes. Eric, it was great to meet you, man. Thank you for your story. Thanks for talking about the album. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Jazz fans, Joe Domino here, the host of the weekly Neon Jazz radio show and regular interview series being produced and distributed from Lee Summit, Missouri. We are very excited to let you know about the second annual Lee Summit Jazz Festival taking place again this summer on June 28th at the Bridge Space, located at 210 Southwest Market Street in downtown Lee Summit. Following the success of the 2024 festival, the lineup will include Lee Summit students, KC Area Youth Jazz, Paganova with Michael Pagan, Horoscope with Stan Kessler, Brad Gregory, Adam Larson, and the Lee Summit Jazz Orchestra. There will also be food trucks and vendors to round out a day of celebration. Early bird tickets are 2 for $30, and all details can be found at lsjazzfest.com. We can't wait to see you there.